As a matter of fact, if it had been up to other people, you wouldn't be here today. But thank God I got bounce back potential. Anybody in the house got some bounce back potential? I may have fallen a couple times, but I keep on getting up. And here it is. Failure isn't my final resting place. Because it's not about how many times you fall, but how many times you get back up again. There's been some key people, some people you may know that have failed in life. You got like Michael Jordan. Michael Jordan, who is the greatest basketball player of all times, he was cut from his high school basketball team because he wasn't, quote unquote, good enough. But thank God he didn't stay down. Oprah was told by her first newscasting that she wasn't made for TV. But some of y'all, thank God she didn't stay down. Here it is, Einstein. He wasn't able to speak until he was 4 years old. Teachers told him he would never amount to anything. But aren't you glad that man doesn't have the final say so? Walt Disney was fired from a local newspaper because he lacked imagination. But thank God he didn't listen to the newspaper, because now you got Disney World and Disneyland. How's that for imagination? And when you look at it, here it is. There's another man that had a failure just recently. His name was Charlie Sheen. Charlie Sheen recently had failure to come around. Charlie Sheen was on a show called 2.5 Men. And when the show was doing its best, when it seemed like they were about to skyrocket, there was a glitch in the system. The glitch in the system was because Warner Brothers wanted to make sure that he didn't get what he deserved. And Charlie said, I know better than that. And before I let y'all use me, here it is, I'll lead the show. Now, to everybody else, that seemed crazy. Because how is it at the top of your career, you would leave a popular show? But how many of you know that as Charlie Sheen left the show, when the network thought that he couldn't make it without him, he showed them better than he can tell them. And as he went from one news report to the next, they kept asking him, how is it that you stood your ground after all they tried to do to you? How is it that you stood up to the ones that said that you couldn't make it? And he said, well, at the end of the day, all I got to know is I'm winning. Now I got to show you this because people tried to call Charlie Sheen crazy. They said that he was bipolar. He said, I'm not bipolar, I'm by winning. He said, because I win here and I win there. And today, I'm not going to just preach, I'm going to by-preach. What is by-preaching? By-preaching is when you talk about two different people at the same time. I need somebody in the house to know that when it is that you decide that I'm going to win no matter what, and when you decide that every time I walk into the building, everybody's hands go up and they stay there, because all I do is, sometimes you got to recognize, in order to win, first of all, it takes the confrontation of the corporation. Look at this. Charlie Sheen decided to go up against Warner Brothers. But not only is Charlie Sheen going up against the corporation, but look at 1 Samuel chapter 17. Verse 1 talks about the fact, verse 1 through 3 talks about the fact that now it is that the Philistines feel like they run everything. And they are on one side of the hill, standing on top of the hill. But on the other side of the hill is the Israelites. You got to see this. And in the middle of the Philistines and the Israelites is the valley. All right, now you got to understand what Israel sees is what's mine is on the other side. The Philistines are standing there saying, we're going to give you what we think you should have. But when you know what God has for me, it is for me, sometimes it's time for some confrontation. Sometimes if you're going to get what you have coming, you can't just sit there and wait for it to come to you. Sometimes you got to go get your own blessing. And is there anybody in the house that said, I'm going to get mine? I'm tired of sitting here playing cute. I ain't scared of nobody. I don't care what you think. I know you don't think I'm supposed to have nothing, but every now and then you got to have some confrontation. Here it is. The Israelites recognize in order to get the promise that they have, they got to go through the Philistines. Now, somebody in the house needs to know that in order to get all that God has for you, there's some things you're going to have to deal with. There's some people that you're going to have to go on and deal with. There's some situations that you're going to have to deal with. You can't keep talking about what you have and won't go after it. I'm talking to some folks in the house that feel like you've been playing cute and you've been trying not to be, you're trying not to get on nobody's nerve, trying to be politically correct. But every now and then, you got to recognize that the kingdom suffers violence, and the violent take it by force. In order to get all the blessings God has for you, I've got to take it. Ain't nobody gonna give you nothing. Have you ever noticed that you sitting around for somebody to give it to you, and the more you got your hand out, the more they keep dragging it back? But when you want what God has for you, I'm not just gonna sit and wait for it, but I'm gonna get it, baby. I've got to go and take it. So now the Philistines are standing there. And watch this. Whenever you have a confrontation of the corporation, next you got to see there's going to be a combination of classification and condemnation. Watch this. It says, so the Philistines called their greatest champion. We know him by name. His name is Goliath. And watch this. It starts talking about all of this stuff that he has. Start talking about all of his accolades and how his armor was and how his helmet was and how his shield was. Isn't it amazing that when people are trying to make themselves look good, they tell you all the stuff they have? Don't sit there now. You ain't never did it before. Sometimes in order to prove who you are, you got to tell what you have. And listen, if the only thing you're made of is what you have, shame on you. Somebody got to hear me in the house. If all you got to do is brag about how much stuff you have, that don't mean very much to me. Here it is, because it's not about what you have, but who you are. Because what you have, here it is, can come and it can go. Sometimes you can be up today and down the same day. You might have won some wars in the past, but here it is, every day is a new beginning. Every day is a new chapter. And here it is, there's always somebody that's working harder than you. See, I got to help somebody in the house. Because in order to understand this, it says that not only did they build themselves up, but they put everybody else down. You ever notice how people, in order to make themselves look good, they have to belittle everybody else? Says that Goliath starts big talking. And what do y'all think y'all can do with me because of all the stuff I have and all my things I've done? You are beneath me. Here it is. Matter of fact, y'all can't even come up against me. If y'all try it and I win, matter of fact, you're going to be my slaves. Y'all got to understand there's some people that will try to belittle you to the point where you start doubting yourself. Have you ever had people talk down to you and understand that 80% of bullying is talk? 80% of bullying is talk. People will talk you down to the point where you won't even look up when you talk to them. I'm talking to you in the house because it's time for the people of God to lift up your head. See, sometimes people can talk down to you so long that you start feeling down. You start saying, maybe they're right. Maybe I ain't supposed to be nobody. Maybe I am going to be stuck here. Maybe there is nothing else for me to do. But here it is. How many of you know if God made you, there's nothing anybody that can say that can tear you down. If God builds you up, can't nobody pull you down. So Goliath now is condemning them. He's telling them who they are. But then it shifts from talking about Goliath to talking about David. It says, but David, who was from Jesse's house. Can I see this? David, who was from Jesse's house. He's an Ephraimite. He comes from the hood. Watch this. When you know where you came from, can't nobody tell you who you are. When who you are has been instilled in you from childhood. When your parents told you were going to be great. When everybody around you wrapped their arms around you and told you were going to be somebody. You can't let nobody else tear you down. See, somebody in the house needs to do a reality check and consider your own identification. Don't let people tell you who you are. But when you know who you are and whose you are, can't no devil in hell tear you down. When you know you are made by God, when you know God don't make no junk, when you know that it doesn't matter how you got here, now that I am here, I'm designed to win. Somebody say, I'm designed to win. I'm supposed to have more. I'm supposed to do better. I'm supposed to be the head, not the tail. I said, you got to know who you are. I'm supposed to be the first, not the last. I'm supposed to be above, not beneath. Says he considered his identification. David considered who he was. But then watch this. When you have the consideration of your identification. Then you engage with the cultivation of conversation. David now, who is Jesse's son, is sent by Jesse to go, and he's supposed to go and get some food for his brothers. As he's going to give some food to his brothers who are ready for war, they're going up, they're getting ready for battle, and as they're getting ready for it, David is sent to deliver food. But as he gets there, he sees how defeated the people are. Have you ever talked to people that were defeated? Have you ever had conversation with people that are defeated? Everything they say is negative. They don't have any up words. They always have down words. How you doing? Well, you know. Could be better. Could be worse. But I won't complain. How's work? Well, it's work. How the kids? Well, you know. Everything, here it is, you have left a conversation with people and you start feeling bad. You start, man, maybe the sun ain't shining. Maybe I don't have the right to be happy. Maybe I should feel sad too. And sometimes, here it is, if you listen to it long enough, you'll join in. David now is talking to the people. And the people said, hey man, that's Goliath. We can't do nothing. What are we to him? We have nothing to offer. We can't beat him. We just gonna let things happen. He doesn't be careful when you surround yourself with people who just want to let life happen. You know, I just go day by day. And whatever happens, it just happens. But how many of you know, a lot of times, the way you think determines what you say. Have you ever noticed that people, when you start thinking you sick, you start acting sick? When you start thinking that you're nobody, you start acting like you're nobody. And so David now is cultivating conversation. David said, hey, don't y'all know that we could do this? And they're like, no, David, no. Go and sit down somewhere because we just need to go and let them do what they're going to do. Here it is. And how is it on Sunday we can claim that I'm going to get my blessing? But Monday go back to the same old. How is it you can shout about what God has for you Sunday and Monday settle for what they give you? Cultivate your conversation. Got to see, here it is. I've learned to stay away from negative people. Hello, lights. Because you could say the sky is the limit, and a negative person would say the sky is falling. And you can say, no, it's not falling, it's the limit. No, it's falling. And you say, no, it's the limit. They say, no, it's falling. And see, if you argue a fool long enough, you know, they got it down pat. You just learn it. So their conversation limited what they were able to do. But watch this. In the midst of their conversation, David has a contemplation of application. David says, because of the fact you won't do it for yourself, and it has to be done, David says, maybe I need to submit my name. See, every now and then God will raise up somebody that's not afraid to stand out in the crowd. Every now and then, God will raise up somebody that says enough is enough. Every now and then in your family, God will raise up a young man or a young woman that will say the curse is broken. Every now and then, God will raise up somebody that won't settle for less. I know what I deserve, and I'm going to get everything I have. David says, I know that y'all are afraid of him. I know that you are scared of what he may do. So David says to Saul, since we need to get our blessing, and since you don't have nobody to go, here it is. David said, I submit my own name. Isn't it amazing how David, who was just there to give somebody something to eat, now is turning into the one that's going to go forth. Every now and then, as we said before last week, God will use some unlikely people. God will use somebody that wasn't even there. Here it is. The people that were there for war were scared. But David, who didn't even have war clothes, said, I'll go. I'm wondering, is there anybody in the house that knows you ain't dressed like everybody else, you don't talk like everybody else, but you ain't scared of nothing? I wonder if there's anybody in the house that says, you know what, I ain't been in church all my life, I don't know all the books of the Bible, but here it is, when it comes to getting what belongs to me, I ain't never scared. Somebody in the house ought to praise God even now. Say, God, I know that I can do whatever you want me to do. Because if God be for me, who can be against me? So Saul says, David, no, you can't go to battle, man. You don't have what it takes. David says, let me tell you my background check. Let me give you my background check. He said, there was a lion that came to eat my father's sheep. And because my father put me in charge of the sheep, the lion, in order to get to the sheep, had to go through me. See, I need some people in the house that you ever stood in the gap for somebody else. Have you ever had to make yourself the one that say, listen, before you get to my children, you got to go through me. Before you get to my family, you got to go through me. Before you can get to my church, you got to go through me. And that's for me and my house. We're going to serve the Lord. David said, I came to tell you that with my bare hands, see, sometimes when you got to do what you got to do, you don't need no help. Sometimes God will raise up something. Have you ever been in a situation where God brought something out of you didn't know was in there? Oh, when it comes to your children, let somebody mess with them. You might not be a fighter, but here it is. All my life, I had to. God will raise something up in you that will make you do something you ain't never did before. David said, with my bare hands, I'm scared of lions, but with my bare hands, I killed the lion. He said, and when it was that the lion was killed, he said, then a bear had the nerve to show up at the same time. He said, and I killed the bear too. Is there anybody in the house that can testify you done been through lions, tigers, and bears? Oh my. You done had hell and high water to deal with, and a giant ain't nothing more than what you already done. He says, I know how to fight, because all my life I had to fight. He said, I've been fighting all my life, but here it is, I wasn't fighting for myself. I was fighting for what I had. See, in somebody in the house, you keep laying there playing dead while the devil takes everything you have. But is there anybody in the house that says, I'm taking back everything that the devil stole from me? I'm taking my house back. I'm taking my children back. I'm taking my family back. Even if it means I have to fight. David says, let me show you my resume. Now look at this. David now submits his application. Watch this. Then you have the confirmation of preparation. Saul says, well, if you're going to fight this fight, here, let me give you my armor. Saul puts his armor on David. Saul puts his armor on David, gives him the sword that he's going to need, gives him the shield he's going to need. And David, it says that the shield and the sword hadn't been tried by David, hadn't been proven by David. In other words, David hadn't used it before. And you got to be careful, brothers and sisters, when you allow people to put something on you. You ever had people try to put something on you that didn't fit? You ever had people try to make you be something you were never designed to be? You got to be careful what people put on you. Because here it is, sometimes people put on you what they wish they had themselves. Sometimes people will try to use what they couldn't use on you. So David is sitting there looking at his armor and looking at the sword and looking at the shield. And David said, I can't use this because it hasn't been proven. I haven't used it before. So if I'm going to fight, I'm going to use what I know. See, and here's for everybody in the house, is you don't have to do nothing new to win the war. Just use what you've been using. Sometimes people try to tell you that you got to do something different. But see, David now recognizes he's been preparing his whole life for such a time as this. David said, I don't need your stuff, because if your stuff was so good, why didn't you win? If your armor worked so good, why didn't you use it? Because see, sometimes people put something on you that they wouldn't put on themselves. He said, so I don't need your armor, Saul. He said, all I need, I brought my stuff with me. He said, because all my life I've been playing with this little slingshot. He said, and I need to go down to the brook, and all I need to do is get 5 smooth stones. And see, to everybody else, you can't go to war with toys. You can't go to war with stuff you've been playing with. Here it is. But how many of you know there's some stuff that I'm used to that God can use in my state? Watch this. God can use what you got to get what you need. Never let people tell you that what you have ain't good enough. Never let people tell you that who you are ain't good enough. Because God can use some simple things. Can I encourage somebody in the house? It is not the complex things that wins the war. It is the simple things. You want to know how simple it is? It is, how is it that you can make less money than you've ever made in your life, but yet still live in the same house you used to live in, pay the same bills you always had to pay, drive a better car than you ever had before, and you still say, I'm winning. Now, I need to ask somebody in the house, it is the simple things. It is not complex. It is not complex at all. Because here it is, though I don't have what it takes, I serve a God that does. And me plus God equals winning. Is there anybody in the house that knows you're winning even right now? When you got God on your side, is God before me? Who can be against me? Says, all I need is what I've been preparing for my whole life. Don't need you to confirm me. Here it is. God has already done it. Don't need you to justify me. God has already done it. And so David now goes up to Goliath, and Goliath begins to laugh. He said, look at this. Y'all done sent the little boy to do a man's job. And y'all teasing me, right? You know good and well, I'm about to have all y'all, and the best you could do is David. This is the best you could do. Sometimes, watch this, be careful when you look down on people. Because the very ones you look down on now, you may have to be looking up to later. It says, but David now stands flat-footed in front of the giant, and he says, give me what you got. Watch this. So David takes 1 stone. Now, I got to tell you, he had 5. Took 1. And I believe David had prayer service right then. David probably had prayer service right then. David said, now, God, you know that what I need is on the other side of this giant. God, you know everything I've been praying for is on the other side of this giant. You know my blessing that I've been praying for is on the other side of this giant. And in order to get it, I'm going to have to get past this giant. And I'm talking to some folks in the house that you see your stuff on the other side. You see your breakthrough on the other side. You see your deliverance on the other side. You see what you've been waiting for on the other side. And you say, God, I know this ain't about me. But you know that if I've been praying for God, I believe you're able to do it right now. And I believe that David started saying the scripture, now unto him who's able to do exceedingly abundantly above all we can ask or think. I know it's a small stone, but God is able to take some small things and do some great work. I need some help in the house. So David rears back with his slingshot. And when he comes forward, the stone, watch this, it says sinks into his head. Y'all got to see this. It didn't just hit him in the head. It sinks in his head. Now, I told you before, Goliath had armor on, right? He had his chest covered. His legs were covered. Arms are covered. The top of his head covered. But watch what happens. David hits him in the forehead. You got to see this. God knows where the weakness is. Y'all got to see this. So here it is. So even when I'm weak, God makes me strong. But God is able to take a strong enemy and make him weak. Y'all got to praise him even there. Has God ever weakened your enemy? Has God ever taken the sting out of your enemy? Has God ever shown you that forehead, sinks in, and watch this, the giant falls. There's somebody in the house. You've been waiting for some things to get out of your way. You've been waiting for some things to move out of your way. But here it is, sometimes God won't move your mountain. But what God will do is give you the strength to climb it. God will take away the people in your path, but God will give you the strength you need to go through the path. And is there anybody that knows that on the other side of this is my blessing? I am one stone away. I'm one stone away from getting what God has for me. I am one stone away, it is, from losing my absolute mind. I know you may not like me now, but wait till I get to the other side. You might think I got something now, but wait till you get on the other side. God is going to bless me with everything I've been waiting for. So now, David hits Goliath one shot. Here it is, you only get one shot. Hits him with one shot, the Goliath falls. David still's got some other stones. I was wondering, David, why did you bring all them other stones if you had faith that God was going to take them out in one? David said, well, you got to understand, Maria, Goliath had some brothers. So just in case, after I got through with Goliath, in case you wanted some, come get some. Is there anybody in the house that you get some strength up, you get some boldness up, after you done dealt with one enemy, you say, devil, bring it on. After I done came over one trial, one tribulation, you tell the enemy, bring it on. You hit me with your best shot, if that's all you got, bring it on. Somebody praise God that he will give you what you need. I ain't a killer, but don't push me. I need you to know that with God I can do anything. So it says, David now kills him with a stone. But here's the point of the message. Lastly, you got to know that you can have a celebration of your presentation. Watch David now. David now kills Goliath. That was good, but there's something better. Because I don't just want to kill the man, I want to kill the culture. Watch this. So David now, verse 51, I'm there, it says, and David ran. David don't have no weapons. David runs to Goliath, takes Goliath's sword. Y'all gotta see this. Takes the enemy's weapon, takes it out, and cuts the enemy's head off with his own sword. Now, y'all gotta see this. He takes Goliath's sword, cuts Goliath's head off with his own sword. See, the reason I don't fret is because I recognize no weapon formed against me. Y'all still sitting there? No weapon formed against me shall prosper. But here's the good news, is that what the enemy meant for evil, God has a way of turning it around and making it work for your good. The sword you were going to kill me with is the sword you died from. Be careful when you dig one grave, because the grave you dig for me, you just might be digging for yourself. Somebody ought to praise God that I was able to cut his head off. And it says when David cuts off the head of Goliath, it says he holds up the head. I gotta have some proof for everybody that doubted me. I need some proof for everybody that said I wouldn't make it. I need some proof for everybody that said that I would never be anything. I need some proof that there is no secret to what God can do. Is there anybody in the house that said I don't just want him dead, but I want his hand? The enemy's been giving me so much hell. I don't just want him to die, but I want his hand because I need a souvenir from where I came from. Is there anybody in the house that knows that God will give you a souvenir? He'll give you, he said, I'm sending you forget-me-nots to help you to remember. God is able to do anything but fail. I need somebody in the house that knows that when Charlie Sheen got through with Warner Brothers, he said that he made more money off the show than he would make on the show. Somebody ought to look at yourself and say, winning. Somebody ought to look at how God can turn things around and say, I'm winning. Somebody look at how God can turn things around. How everybody gave up on you. But look at you now. You got more than you ever had before. You're walking in the blessings of God. Somebody shout, I'm winning. I'm winning. And with Jesus Christ, I know I can win. The reason I know I can win is because when it looked like he was losing, when all hope was gone, when they had nailed his hands and nailed his feet, when he had given up the ghost, they laid him in a tomb. They said, you have lost it. We have won the war. He stayed there all Friday night. They thought they had won. Stayed there all Saturday. They thought they had won. Stayed there all Saturday night. They had a victory party. But is there anybody